Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the Education Assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are on the perennial border because it's a nice sunny spot on a cold winter day that has a big, beautiful holly in the background, which is very convenient. Today we've got a program for you all about hollies. We've got our director, Mark Weathington, here, who's pulled together a whole bunch of hollies. He's going to run through the entire genus of Ilex. He's going to tell you everything you need to know about every single holly that anybody ever could have ever conceived, or we'll try and fit as much as we can into a single hour.
Yes.
It'll be beautiful, and we're grateful that you are joining us. Those of you joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I will pass things over to Mark to tell us everything about hollies.
Everything about hollies. I'm going to talk about all 570 or so species of hollies. No, we're not going to do that. But hollies are an important part of the garden. A lot of times people think of them as kind of background plants, and they can be, but there's a lot of amazing hollies out there. I started off trying to cram in the groups and important ones and ones that are in the landscape. And I decided, no, I'm just going to do ones that I like instead. Hollies are native basically everywhere. They go North and South America. There's actually a whole section of the center of the U.S. where they're not native, but then Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, all the islands, Micronesia in there in the South Pacific, the Caribbean, just basically all over. You can find hollies in the tropics, in cold, temperate places. They're all over the place, and they are trees or shrubs. As far as sometimes you see them listed as epiphytes, they're not true epiphytes. Epiphytes are plants that grow in other trees, and you can get hollies that are growing in large old trees because a bird has eaten the berries and deposited them up on a big old tree where there's some organic matter up in like the crotch of a tree. But that's not truly epiphytic. That's just opportunistic. There are no vines as far as I know. There's some kind of ground covery types, but they're really all trees and shrubs. This is really the book about hollies, the best one you can get, by Fred Galley. He's also written a book on azaleas that's about the same size. This was put out in 1997, so it's a little bit dated. It doesn't have all the new cultivars in it, but it's hard to beat. And you talk about a life's work. That's a life's work. And now with all the new cultivars, it'd probably be another half again or doubled in thickness. So it wouldn't be for the faint of heart to take that on. So Ilex, that's what the genus is. Hollies, the name is Ilex. Ilex comes from an old Latin word for the holm oak, which is Quercus ilex. The holm oak is a European oak. It's got evergreen leaves that are a little bit spiny. They resemble a holly, so that's where the name comes from. As far as I know, Ilex doesn't actually mean anything or predates what we know. Hollies, one thing people know about them, or many people do, is that they are dioecious. Dioecious meaning they have separate male and female plants. Most plants have all the male and female parts all in the same flower, or at least on the same plant. But dioecious plants have male plants and female plants. They're not quite black and white. Sometimes you have them where they have mostly male parts, but they have some of the flowers have female parts and vice versa. But for the most part, dioecious. So if you want fruits on your hollies, you're going to need to have a male and a female. And when you get into some of the more unusual things, that can be difficult. All right. I'm going to start with one of our natives. This is Ilex opaca. Ilex opaca, is really found all over the eastern U.S. It grows. It's one of the few broadleaf evergreens that can be grown up in the New England area and into Canada, but it goes naturally all the way down to Florida. It's a broadleaf evergreen tree, like I said. It grows usually in a pyramidal shape. At least when young, it can get really broad as it gets older. But it's a very common plant. And I always love during the wintertime on taking car rides, you look through our deciduous woods and, it's kind of all bare, and then you'll see this evergreen in there and then another evergreen. Those are our native hollies. And it's good to point out that most hollies will grow in a pretty significant amount of shade. Now, they don't fruit as well in the shade, but they will grow there. So this is an odd one. It's a female, as you can see, because it's got fruits. This is one that was actually found when the current director of the U.S. National Arboretum, Richard Olson, was a student here at NC State University. He found it at a rest stop. Us plant people, you stop at the rest stop, and some people have to go and some people don't. Well, if you're a plant person and you don't have to go and use the facilities, you start walking around and looking at whatever's around there. And he found this plant that was, that all the leaves were curled up. It's a botanical curiosity kind of thing. It's probably has no real commercial value. You're not going to be able to buy this in your local garden center, but it actually has made a beautiful, tight pyramidal tree. It really is attractive. Now, as a small plant in a pot, imagine this sitting in a pot. It looks like it's been sprayed with chemicals. But as it's gotten bigger, it's really gotten a lot of character. And I'm going to take some of the magic out of naming plants for y'all. This was growing at the Arboretum for many years. One day, Richard was visiting, and we were looking at it and kind of laughing that actually it made a great tree. And we just had it as Ilex opaca curled leaf. And we said, we should put a name on this. And so we said, how about Rollover? So it became Ilex opaca Rollover. And that's really all it took to name the plant. So, yeah, there is not some secret cabal that blesses plant names. But Ilex opaca, very widespread, great plant. We grow tons of all kinds of hybrids of hollies and all these things, but really our native Ilex opaca, there are hundreds of cultivars of it, and they're fantastic.
And it's a native tree. And a lot of people criticize native cultivars, but you look at that specimen, how much fruit it has on it. That's all food for birds. And all of those fruits suggest that was covered in bees as well. It was feeding the pollinators too. So while it is a cultivar of a native, it seems to be a pretty solid one, at least from an environmental perspective.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the fruit. The birds do eat the fruit, but hollies don't tend to spread. They don't tend to be a problem at all. Right. Even the Asian or ones from other countries. And holly fruits are great for birds. Some are better than others for birds. There are some species that have more fats in them, which are great for birds going into winter, but that has nothing to do with where they come from. It just has to do with individual plants. And another point you made about the bees, when they flower, the bees are out there working these, and these are often flowering at a time, often very early spring, when not much else is flowering, that bees are working them. And I worked at a place with just a huge collection of hollies, especially deciduous hollies, ones that lose their leaves. And I would look at it, in fruit, and I would say, oh, that cultivar is the best fruiting one, that one. And then the next year, it wouldn't be as good in fruit. And another one or two would be really good. And the next year, maybe that first one still wouldn't be good. And then the following year, it was great. These plants flower at subtly different times. And so if you have just two, and they kind of flower, one's an early flowering, one's a late flowering, you may not get good cross-pollination. And there are some good charts of what are good males for at least deciduous hollies. Yeah. But what I also noticed was, sometimes it would rain for several days. Sure. And the bees wouldn't be out. And so all the pollen was being produced, but it was all getting washed away and the bees weren't moving it. So it's not which one is the best.
Right.
It's really a variety will give you the most reliable berry show each year. All right. I love my variegated plants and colorful leaf plants. And there are a lot of great ones. And I especially like them with hollies because, as I said, they can grow in shady places. And so when you have these variegations, they really pop in the shade during the summer, but also in the winter. They really add a lot. And if you grow a lot of camellias, which can be very dark, these can add a little bit of light. This is a real old cultivar from the 50s called O Spring. It is a cultivar of the Chinese holly, which is interesting. They call this one the Chinese holly, and there are hundreds in China. But this is Ilex cornuta O Spring, named for Otto Spring, who found the plant. Ilex cornuta means horned, and that's because it has these sharp points on here. They're the kind of broadleaf, almost square-shaped leaves on Ilex cornuta. Lots of these are grown. Real common landscape plant, especially in the 70s and early 80s. Just tons and tons of these are planted, and they're still around. O Spring is a male, so we don't get any fruit on it, but it'll grow into a tall, upright tree. As a young plant, it tends to be a little thin and scraggly and not so pyramidal, but it's one of the better large variegated ones. So O Spring. Good old Otto. Now one that's a hybrid, perhaps the most widely planted larger leafed holly, evergreen holly that's been planted is one called Nellie Stevens. We have used to have long hedges of it. Actually, right behind the perennial border where we are now was a hedge of Nellie Stevens hollies. Fast growing, nurserymen absolutely love them. This is one that was found by local plants person, Tony Avent of Plant Delights, Juniper Level Botanic Garden. The new growth comes out bright gold, and he calls it Whoa Nellie. So Ilex Whoa Nellie. It's a hybrid. So now there's an interesting thing about these gold leaf hollies, not necessarily the variegated ones, but the ones that have these gold leaves. And this is true for all of them that I've grown, is that when the leaves are shaded, pretty much any shading they get, they turn green. And not a little bit green, they turn green. And when a leaf is partially shaded by other leaves, but is, when the sun hits, it is always shaded, you get something like this, where, the bottom half of this was shaded all season long, so you only get that gold on the top part. So they'll grow in the shade just fine. You will not get this color at all. And in fact, as they get older, they often, one side will be green because it's not getting enough sunlight because the sun's, on one side of it. But even, this was an interior branch. It's solid green, whereas the tips are really nice and gold. Hollies will take almost any kind of pruning, shearing. It's one few plants that a recommended technique is called hat racking, where you cut it back to what looks like a hat rack, a stump with just bare branches coming out, and in a year and a half it'll be a beautiful plant again. But you don't have to go that hard. But some of these gold leaf ones are ones that really are good for doing that, because you get this new growth coming out that's gold, it's not shading itself, and it stays really, really bright gold. And Whoa Nellie, as Nellie Stevens is a female, so you do get these nice big red fruits. Now, if you like the big leaves, but don't like them to be quite so spiny, a great plant is the luster leaf holly, Ilex latifolia. This particular one is called Gulino Gardens. I don't know if that's a true cultivar or if it just came from Gulino Gardens, and sounds Italian to me, but I don't know. I don't know that garden. It grows like what I think of as a typical Ilex latifolia. So it has these large leaves that are serrated but not sharp. The leaf is real thick and leathery, glossy green, beautiful plant. This is a large growing thing. It'll get 50 or 60 feet tall. If you have female, and that's Gulino Gardens we know is a female, it will have these just dense clusters of fruit along the branches. And these will turn bright red. They're just a little bit later in turning red, which is good because we have others that are red now. We have some that I didn't take cuttings of for this because those hollies had already had bright red fruits and birds had eaten them. This will ripen up later in the season and get a different crop of birds eating it. Beautiful hedging plant, beautiful specimen plant. I really wish they were more widely grown, but they are big plants, so you have to have the space for them. Oh, incidentally, I've been told that with Ilex latifolia that the leaves are sometimes used as a substitute for tea, which is kind of interesting. We know that there's caffeine in yerba mate, which is holly, Ilex paraguariensis, and there's another South American holly guayasa that has caffeine, and then we have a native one which I'll talk about, Ilex vomitoria, that also has caffeine in it, but I don't know if Ilex latifolia does, but it says it's made as a substitute for tea, so that kind of intrigued me, and I'm gonna do a little more digging, but I didn't have time before this.
It's a great plant just to grow for the foliar characteristics, whether you can drink it or not.
I agree. It really is a beautiful plant. And it's so nice for other plants. You know, you have a coral bark maple in front of it, or you know, something like that during the winter, it's just got that bright dark green, and then you've got, you know, this color in front of it.
So good.
It is. All right, let's see. In my basket of goodies down here, there you are. Okay. I don't like spiny things. I don't grow cactus at home. I don't grow, I grow one agave. I'm not into the spiny stuff. So I really like these entire leaved hollies that have no spines at all. This is one, Ilex integra. This is what the species looks like. A female, you can see it's got those red fruits on there. Or maybe I should show this one. Beautiful plant. In all honesty, this is one that this is a gold leafed one, but I took this cutting from a part that was shaded on there, so it's just solid green. But that's what the species looks like. Makes an upright plant when young, can get broader spreading with age. Now, this is a plant that I have just always really loved. It's Ilex integra green shadow, and it has that white margin around the leaf. Now, again, this is different than those gold leaf ones. This will keep that variegation in shade. This is a male, so you don't get fruit on it, but it just makes this lovely columnar plant, really nice. It's a little less cold hardy than Ilex integra. The species is hardy to zone 7, 7B. Green shadow is really 8A. It used to take a hard hit here 20 years ago when we get cold weather. It doesn't really anymore. So one of these days we'll have a real winter and it'll get knocked back. But like I said, hollies rejuvenate very, very well. These are Japanese mainly. Maybe they go into Korea as well. But really, just beautiful plants. I really like them.
No kidding. The cream color on the margins there, that is so good. With that, like, it's a pale green, you know, like those two, it's not quite as dark as the other hollies. It's just a really nice, you know, contrast to what you might normally expect.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now we got kind of an interesting group of plants. So, hybrids. There are a lot of hybrids of hollies out there. And we think of hybrids as something that are man-made crosses, and they often are, but there are naturally occurring hybrids. And one of the naturally occurring hybrids is Ilex X attenuata. Attenuate means kind of the leaf comes out is narrow, it attenuates. This is Ilex opaca, the American holly, that first one I showed with the curled leaf. Ilex opaca crossed with another native, well, it can be one of two, Ilex cassini or myrtifolia, which is a deep south, narrow-leafed plant. So it can take after either one of the parents in some way. So this is kind of typical Ilex attenuata. It's got the leaf that looks a lot like Ilex opaca, the American holly, but it's thin textured. This is one that's obviously a female, and they do fruit great when they're if they're females and there are males anywhere around. They make large trees, 50 or 60 feet tall. A lot of the hybrids that are grown are attenuata hybrids. So you see that nice broad leaf. Well, the most popular Ilex attenuata is one called Fosteri. It's not actually the true name, it's Foster number 2. There's Foster number 1 through 5 or 8. And the one that is grown as Ilex attenuata Fosteri is technically should be Foster number 2. The other numbers are not grown anywhere. You'd have a hard time tracking them down. Well, it looks like this. This is a sport from that, a mutation that grew out that has that gold foliage. So this is called Sunny Foster. And like its parent, like it's the parent plant, Sunny Foster is a female. Foster's holly, as it's often called, is a female, and it makes a tight pyramid, doesn't grow nearly as tall as the more broadleaf forms, but still will get 20, 30 feet tall. But you can see that much narrower leaf on there, and it grows a much tighter habit. So it has more of that Ilex cassini or myrtifolia foliage to it, shape to it, and it's thicker textured from the Ilex opaca. Beautiful plants. I love Ilex Fosteri. Now, an old plant that was new to me, one of our local nurserymen introduced me to it, is this Ilex attenuata NASA. NASA.
Is that the one overlooking the trial gardens over there?
It's the one overlooking the trial gardens.
That's a really pretty plant.
It is. It is. And it's a hybrid that was found growing on NASA property in Alabama by Tom Dodd, who introduced a lot of these attenuata hybrids from the wild. It's very dense plant. You can see very small leaves. It really has that myrtifolia foliage to it, but dense evergreen plant. The largest plant I know of is about 15 feet tall.
Whoa.
And it's right outside the house of the nurseryman who gave me this plant, who told me it was a male, but it isn't. It's a female. Very definitely a female. Really nice. It is being grown somewhat by our local nurserymen, which I found exciting. So we talked about fat content in berries. I can't speak for all attenuatas, but I know that Foster holly, and so Sunny Foster as well, because they're the only differences are leaf color from the same plant, are extremely high in fats. It's a really, really good plant. And one of the other nice things about Fosters is they have a reputation for being able to fruit by themselves.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So great plants, but you can see how different these all are. You put those out in a row and say, you know, are these all the same, from the same parentage? And the answer would be, no, it doesn't look like it, but they are. Okay, let's switch to some smaller plants. Probably the most widely planted holly is the Japanese holly, Ilex crenata. Ilex crenata, it's got little green leaves. You know why people love Ilex crenata? Because it looks like a boxwood. And boxwoods can be tough to grow. Ilex crenata, not as cold hardy. They're really, zone 6 is pushing it. You got to find a cold hardy cultivar for zone 6. But You can get narrow upright ones like sky pencil. You can get low flat ones. Hellerai is kind of the classic for that. They grow just kind of as shrubs if you get the wild ones. They do have fruit if they're female.
No kidding.
But the fruit is black. You getting that? Yeah. So not terribly showy. We have a native evergreen one with kind of a longer leaf called inkberry that also has black fruit. This is a cultivar, but I don't know which one. I took it off one of our plants and didn't pay any attention just because it's Ilex cornuta.
It's funny, you see those things all over the place. That is literally the first time I've seen its fruit.
Yeah. I took the cutting and the fruit were there. So
No kidding, yeah.
There are some gold ones, quite a few actually. This one is Drops of Gold, and it's got the we call kind of a bullate leaf, which is kind of that curved over, almost puffy looking aspect to it. You know, you can see this is one I clipped that was getting some shade. It'll be solid gold in full blazing sun, but any part of the leaf is shaded. Again, it'll lose that. This is a fine one, makes a little mound. People like the little dwarf ones. They don't all grow as little dwarfs, but many do. This is one from local nurseryman Pat McCracken, who's got Nursery Garden Treasures. This was from maybe the most cold-hardy dwarf Japanese holly called Hugendorn, Ilex cornuta Hugendorn. And so this gold sport that propagated and grew called Adorned, because Hugendorn, so Adorn.
Oh, okay, nice.
So stiff this gold. We've been growing it for probably 15 years, and our plant is maybe 2.5 or 3 feet tall and 4 feet wide. I like it better than any of the other gold leaf Ilex cornutas out there. So there you go. However, I don't know why you would grow an Ilex cornuta if you live here in the Southeast. Because we have a plant, Ilex vomitoria. Terrible name. It's because it has caffeine in it, and there were some native peoples who would brew this and keep it on a fire overnight, get it incredibly concentrated, drink it in the morning, vomit, and they thought that would really that started their day right, I guess. But you have to have it super concentrated and drink a lot of it. It is actually, interestingly, it's got caffeine like yerba mate does, but it also has theacrine and theobromine, which are the caffeine relatives you find in dark chocolate that give you all the caffeine, all the energy, but not the jitters that you get with caffeine. So it's actually a really good plant. But Ilex vomitoria, there are little dwarf ones, there are big tall tree ones, there are weeping ones, there are middle-sized ones, and they're so much more interesting than the Japanese holly. They've got red fruits on them if they're female, which makes them great. There's a lot of different forms. We've actually been collecting a lot of these. We've got, so I didn't mention, we have about 125 different hollies here at the Arboretum. Nice. It includes about 30 species, and 18 of those 125 are Ilex vomitoria, because it's a group that I've really gotten interested in recent years and want to grow more. This particular one is one I really like. Now, I said they had red fruit. This is one called Yawkey, which came from Yawkey plantations in South Carolina. And it is the most fructiferous, the densest, most fruit on any holly year in and year out that I have ever come across. Every year it just fruits itself like like crazy. And it grows as kind of this upright shrub with these long branches going up. And its only problem is it fruits so much that sometimes it peels those branches down.
Jeez.
So some selective pruning can help with that. But it is such a good plant. We've propagated and distributed it a bunch of times. I don't have it at my house, so maybe we need to propagate it again to get out there. But I love this gold fruited form. I typically tell people when you have a red fruited form of something and a gold fruited form, the gold fruited form is interesting, but it's not as showy. This is showier than any other one that I've ever seen.
No kidding.
Loved it. Now, there are variegated ones. This is an old one called tricolor, and I think it may be mostly extinct except for where we have distributed this plant to other gardens. We got it at a place in Louisiana that's now defunct, and I just haven't been able to track it down anywhere. But it comes out with kind of a yellowy margin to the green centers, and it goes to more white as the season progresses. And then when the weather turns cold, it really goes pink. And then in the following spring, when it leafs out, it's really pink, and then it goes to that creamy yellow and green and over again. It's a male, and it's kind of a mounding shrub, but I think it's really a lovely plant.
It's certainly unique, that's for sure.
There you go. Has a good personality.
Definitely. And there was charm to it too. I noticed the little branch that had only the yellow leaves on it, it maybe was dying, but it was a bright pink. It was beautiful.
Yeah. No, some of the young branches, exactly.
You can get lost in that plant looking at all the variation and all the different colors.
You really can. All right. Lost one I was going to talk about somewhere along the way. So getting into some of the species that are out there. Wait, where was that? I had that. Uh-oh. Oh, I'm getting this plant because I actually want to stick cuttings of it afterwards because our plant is small. I mentioned Ilex myrtifolia when I was talking about the hybrids. This is Ilex myrtifolia, a myrtle leaf holly. It's a native southeastern holly. It's very narrow leaves. This is a variegated one called, we just passed around as dueling variegated, D-U-L, not like dueling with swords, for a friend of mine, Darren Dueling, who's up in Norfolk, where I used to live, working up there. It's one he found down in Texas or Louisiana, I believe. And this is just it just has this wide, for such a small leaf, yellow margin to the leaves. It's really pretty, I think. Ours is a little plant, so I want to stick cuttings of this and make more of them so we can share it with people. But just a cool little plant, and that's what we're doing now. Cool little plants. Let's see. Just going to go through several of these ones that are not spiny that I like a lot. So this is Ilex sugarokii, variety Longa pedunculosa. There is also a variety Breve pedunculosa. I collected Breve pedunculosa on Taiwan, and it was one of the prettiest plants I've seen in the wild. One of the prettiest hollies for sure. It was beautiful. But this is kind of a tight growing shrub. Will get some size as it gets older, but the peduncle is the fruit stalk. So this is Longa pedunculosa, so it'll have its fruits on fairly long little stalks going out there, but nice little foliage plant. Ours has been very, very slow. All right, I was going back and forth, and I put in notes. I like to try and share names with Blake, so he isn't trying to type in Latin names furiously. And I put this in as Ilex ficoidea, and I think it's actually Ilex pedunculosa. We won't know for sure until it fruits, because one of the ways you can really distinguish that helps distinguish hollies is looking at their seed coats. Whether they're smooth or have striations or are bumpy can tell you a lot about them. Botanists are weird. But this is one we collected in 2018 on a mountain called Senshinshan. I won't have Blake try to write that one out.
Thank you.
Because it's not like it doesn't spell like it sounds. But I mean, this foliage is just gorgeous on there. And part of the reason I think it could be Ficoidea is it looks like Ficus benjamina leaves.
Yeah, definitely.
But I've got my doubts. It seems to... Ficoidea should have some serrations to the leaves, and this has none. There's two that have very similar names. One that is grown in the U.S., and then this one. And so
interesting.
We'll call that Ficoidea, Ficoidea, and move on. Another that from that we saw on that same trip, this is not actually from that trip, but is this Ilex dimorphophylla. And dimorphophylla should mean that the leaf has two different shapes. And you think of that as when it gets more mature, the leaf shape changes. That doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm not sure why dimorphophylla is the name. But it grows in almost these little whorls of foliage. And nice, the plants we saw were shrubby. I'm not sure how big it will get ultimately, but it is really dense and very, very distinct in how it grows and how it looks. I think this could be, if it proves to be good and cold hardy, I think this could be a plant that really could take off in the nursery trade. So we'll have to think of a good common name for it so it can be sold, because dimorphophylla probably won't do it. Oh, let's see. Those aren't anything interesting. Let's go on to kind of the last group, and these are the deciduous hollies. We think of hollies as being evergreen shrubs, evergreen trees, but there are deciduous ones. This is our native Ilex verticillata. Ilex verticillata grows from Nova Scotia to Florida, so very wide range. It goes completely deciduous, and it has great fruits. This is one called Little Goblin Red, NCIV 1 or 2? One.
Yeah.
Little Goblin Red. So this is a little dwarf one. They'll grow into pretty large shrubs, Ilex verticillata, and there are some other ones that are native that are deciduous. Ilex decidua, a couple of those. But great for birds. They're fantastic. In this series, there's Little Goblin Guy, which is the male, Little Goblin Red, and Little Goblin Orange, and Little Goblin Yellow. So the whole range of them. And they're really good if you get a male that will pollinate them, that pollinates at the same time, which is why it's nice that Little Goblin Guy, you can get that with them. And you only need like one male for every 5 or 8 hollies to do well. Now, from Asia comes this deciduous tree. This will grow to a 60-foot or more tall tree, single-trunked tree. This is Ilex micrococa. And you see it still has some leaves on it, but they'll drop. Now, identifying hollies, especially without leaves, is difficult. And there's a lot that they get confused with boxwoods, and they get confused with osmanthus, which are sometimes called false hollies.
Sure.
Hollies are always alternate leaved. You see how these leaves are on opposite sides of the, there's one this way and you go up another one this way. Osmanthus and boxwood are opposite. So this leaf would be directly across from this leaf. There are no opposite leaved hollies except the New Guinea species. There's 3 species in New Guinea that are all opposite leaved. No. Yeah, New Guinea, not New Caledonia, New Guinea. Who knows why? You're never going to run across those, so don't worry about it. If you have trouble remembering that, you don't start with holly, start with osmanthus. Osmanthus are opposite. You know that hollies are the other way, so they're alternate. And since they're alternate, the boxwoods are not like holly, so boxwoods have to be opposite.
There you go.
Go the roundabout way. Are there any other questions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, for sure. So John wanted to know, can you propagate a holly like spring by cuttings?
Yes. Hollies are, in general, this is a broad statement for a group with, 500, 600 species, in general are relatively easy. Now, the ones that are very heavily variegated, like spring, can be a little bit trickier. The typical way to do them is to do them as winter cuttings,
no kidding,
hardwood winter cuttings, and use hormone 3, which is as a rooting hormone. We do most of our summer stuff with hormone 1. Hormone 3 has a different concentrations of rooting hormones, and for whatever reason seems to work a little bit better. Now, I'm of the opinion that most things that root during the winter will root at other times. It's just that because we usually do like evergreens during the winter, and I think it's just because evergreens have leaves and it feels safer to propagate them then, and so we do those as winter cuttings. But I've rooted hollies anytime.
Yeah, I've rooted specifically drops of gold one time. I took those in January and I used hormone 3 and I gave it bottom heat and I got 100% success rate.
Yeah, doing bottom heat really helps with winter cuttings.
No kidding. Yeah.
Now, speaking of rooting it, there was Pat McCracken, who I mentioned with one of these plants. He used to, for J.C. Raulston here, he used to graft the English hollies, Ilex aquifolium, onto Nellie Stevens sticks.
Yeah.
And root it all at the same time. He would do the graft and dip the bare Nellie Stevens sticks and have it root. So
that's okay. Plants are something else, aren't they?
They are.
You just keep learning about them and they still surprise you with what they're capable of. Okay. Sharon wants to know what kind of Chinese holly is invasive. She says that she's had some Chinese hollies as landscape plants planted many years ago that escaped and are growing throughout the woods, and it's very difficult to remove them.
Well, if you were growing something that was called a Chinese holly, it's Ilex cornuta, the horned holly. Not generally considered much of a pest, but certainly if they like where they are, and they have berries, the birds will eat the berries and will move them. Yeah.
For sure. But so we're not really concerned about invasiveness of hollies generally?
In general, no, not at all. Anytime you overplant something, an Ilex cornuta, the Chinese holly, there's too many of those planted, you can run into problems. And that's why you want a diversity of plants.
For sure. Okay. Yi Ping is wondering, why are most popular hollies cultivars derived from spiny species such as aquifolium, cornuta, latifolia, opaca, and cassine?
Is this Yi Ping from University of Georgia?
Yes.
This is not fair. Yi Ping knows more about hollies than I will ever know. In fact, one of the hollies I didn't show is this Ilex pubescens that we got from the National Arboretum, who didn't have it identified, and she came here and in 2 seconds said, "This is Ilex pubescens." So, to answer your question, because I maybe know more about people's tastes and things like that, I think the reason more of the spiny hollies are grown as landscape plants is because they were more available to start. So Ilex aquifolium in Europe, Ilex opaca here, and those were the big ones that all the breeding came about. And most plants were coming, at least in the West, were coming from England and Europe and from the northern part of the United States, Boston and with the Arnold Arboretum in Chicago area, and those were where the collections were, and those spiny-leaved hollies really grew great there. And it does seem like a lot of the entire leaf hollies come from farther south. You may be able to correct me on that. But so I think it started off because that's what people had, the spiny hollies. And for whatever reason, they kept liking those spiny hollies and kept growing them. There's a phenomenal one from the National Arboretum called Cherry Bomb. Has big fruits, it has entire leaves, it has integra in the background that we talked about. It is a beautiful plant, and it just never did take off. And it may be because it doesn't look like what people think of as a holly.
Jeez, wow. Okay, Chris wants to know, what are some diseases that hollies are prone to in our area?
Yiping? We don't, other than the ones that really don't want to grow here, which have root problems and die, we don't tend to have a lot of big problems with hollies.
No kidding.
It's one of the reasons they're so popular.
Yeah.
Is there aren't a lot of problems.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I liked your hypothesis about why you cultivate more of the spiny ones, because it's what you have and it's what works. And like Ilex, they're everywhere because they work. So, natural resistance to disease really, or just our conditions are such that they're really thriving and nothing can really touch them.
For the most part, they don't want to be in really, really wet soils.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be bone dry. They're kind of kind of that, middle land, but there's so many, and they grow in so many different niches that
absolutely
hard to
full sun, shade tolerant, take your pick. They're tough plants. Okay, that looks like all the questions that have come in for today, and close to about all the time that we have anyway. So wonderful. Thank you so much for pulling this together, Mark, and sharing all these
fun.
I noticed you skipped over one, though, honestly. You skipped over Ilex bergerii. Was there any particular reason you skipped that one? Just to personally insult me? Is that...
is that one you like? So I did that Ilex bergerii because we really thought we were going to be able to introduce this.
No kidding.
This is a great, narrow upright when it's young, gets wide with age, entire leaf, beautiful plant. We worked with it with the nursery industry. They loved it.
Yeah.
When they stuck the plant and grew it, it just was too slow and thin and spindly in a pot.
Jeez.
And could never grow out. So.
That holly is the most deliciously fragrant holly in our arboretum.
Yes.
Hollies already smell pretty nice if you're brave enough to stick your snoot in them when they're covered in bees, but that one is strong enough. We've got it planted in our Japanese garden. That one is strong enough. It fills the whole space, and it's really nice.
You're right.
Yeah, that's why I like it. But so
I do love it. Like I said, we tried to get it introduced to the industry.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for pulling this all together, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Midweek program today. We will be back next Wednesday. It'll be the final Midweek program of the year. Mark and Greg will be going over the garden standouts of 2025, so you don't want to miss that. We will see you all next time. Y'all take care.